I know. I'm actually really enjoying this platform. I've used a couple, but the countdown is clutch because the other ones would just say live, and
Mhm.
the other person on the other side usually would be like, "Wait, are we live?" Like, yeah, we're live. So it's a different platform, and I'm enjoying it. But all that being said, Irene, you and I have been trying to get this time down to chat for quite some time. How long would you say it's been?
Longer than I would care to admit right now,
Yeah.
given that it's mostly from my end.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I think it's been like almost like 3 months. There's been a couple things that I really, really connected with Irene, and I told you this right before we started. Um, like like how when you talk to someone and your vibes kind of check out and you're like, you know what, like I could be friends with that person. Like I instantly got that from you. And then hearing a little bit about your story and then obviously what you do for our Red Bull athletes, there was just a ton of reasons why I was like, wow, Irene would be perfect for this pod. So I am so thankful that you're here right now and that we actually locked down a time. So welcome to the Can't Believe I Made It podcast, my friend. I'm so happy to have you.
Can't believe I finally made it here onto this podcast.
Yeah. You know what? That's key too. That's honestly been a really good joke amongst guests that I've been trying to get on that are like, I can't believe I made it, man. We're here. So um Irene, I'm so thankful to have you on. I think a fantastic place to start is talking about obviously what you do, the type of people that you work with, and then kind of going from there. Because, like I said, your story is really fucking cool. So we'll spend some time on that. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a mental performance specialist at Red Bull. So basically, I am helping athletes, more so on the mental optimization, like optimizing their mental game, performing under
Hmm.
pressure, their confidence, utilizing different mental skills to kind of help with that under high pressure situations. And then on the flip
Yeah.
side, I also do a little bit of the cognitive training, so that includes reaction time, decision making, all those things. And really, what I'm trying to train on that side is having athletes be able to direct their attention and make decisions and react quickly and accurately under higher cognitive loads. So while they're attending to a lot of different things, which is exactly what's going to happen during competitions. So that's in
That's
a nutshell, kind of what I do.
I know. I actually never heard you say that.
Really?
That's a fantastic elevator pitch of like what you do. Wow. I didn't even ask you to prepare that. You just came off with that. There's I mean there's a lot there's a lot I know, right? We rehearsed everything. No. There's a couple things in there that I think would be great places to dig into. I'm personally still very much learning about my role in what we're doing with a lot of our athletes and things like that. And what's really fantastic, and one really big reason why I love what I do and I love who I collaborate with, when you get other high level people thinking in really high level ways, the conversations are really cool and you get to learn a lot from one another and take pieces of that. What I heard you say right there, which is so interesting, because I'm still learning about the wide array of athletes that we have on the Red Bull roster.
Mm.
And I think that part is so cool because everyone has not only such diversity, but they have diverse abilities. One of the things I heard you say right there is like you're trying to recreate. I'm going to butcher this, but what I heard was you're trying to recreate like those moments where they have to be quick in their decision making. They have to be locked in. That that process is nuts. I mean, you have to emulate like the dude that did Stratus. Like like obviously not exactly him, but like you have to emulate that environment. I mean, what is that like for you being able to create that space and also be able to like help the athlete like get there?
Um, I mean, what I create will never be exactly like a competition scenario, right? Like there's just so many factors and variables to a comp scenario. However, what we do try to do is creating just like how do I explain this? So when an athlete trains for their season, so they go to the weight room, they do strength and conditioning. So they start with lower like if they're like deconditioned, then they start like with lower weights and then they work their way up to higher weights, heavier weights, and all those things. Similarly with me, like I teach mental skills to athletes in a controlled setting.
Oh, shit.
So we'll start with like low pressure. They might come to my room. We'll talk about some of their strengths, maybe even some barriers they're hitting. And then we'll come up with interventions or skills to teach them for that. So we'll practice in the room, no pressure whatsoever. This is a safe space, calm environment. Let's practice these skills. And then throughout, then they start to take these skills that they've learned into, you know, maybe more medium pressure situations. So maybe not a situation with consequence, but maybe a situation where they're activated. So sometimes it'll be in a strength session, right? Maybe I'll have them visualize something before an exercise. So not a place of consequence yet, but you know, they're physiologically activated, they're under physical fatigue, and now they're adding this element to it. And then on the next step, we also have these cognitive training tools, which have essentially like a lot of the athletes really enjoy because it seems like a giant video game sometimes to them. This is where a little bit more of that pressure comes in, right? Because like sometimes we'll create competitions or they're just naturally competitive. You don't even need to create the competition for them. They will create it for themselves. On any
I love that.
This is where you can combine the cognitive training piece with the mental skills, where it's like, okay, we've been practicing these things to help you self-regulate under high pressure, to help you visualize and do all these things. Okay, so let's bring this piece into here. Because the more practice you get in real time, like the more you're going to be able to utilize that in an actual high pressure situation. You don't, you know, practice a skill one time in a room and be like, oh, here's like, you know, the competition of my life. Like, let's hope this works.
Yeah. I can imagine that's a lot of, I mean, it could be a pressure situation for you because you're trying to emulate the environment, but you're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at our roster and some of the really cool things that athletes have done in the way that they push their limits, like you can't recreate that.
No, you can't. So yeah, I mean, for me, most of the time, you know, for a person, it's like most of the time in high pressure situations, we will fall to the level of our training. We don't necessarily rise to the occasion. I'm not saying that's always the case. I've definitely seen cases where athletes have, you know, tapped into another state, like flow state, whatever you want to call it, and they have risen to the level or to the occasion. However, most of the time we will fall to the level of our training and our systems.
Oh,
so
holy shit. Hey, oh my God, Irene. See, this is why we connect. So for our pod family out there, you've heard me say this before. You are rarely ever going to rise to your goal, but you are always going to fall to your systems. Irene just gave us a really big gem there. So, and I think a lot of our listeners, Irene, are high-level people who are looking to gain a competitive edge in their habits and their rituals so that they can pour into some of the things that mean the most to them. And a lot of them are athletes. So I'm wondering for you as like, I don't know. I mean, let's tap into your story a little bit.
Let's do it.
I've always, when you and I first met, your story really, really motivated me because I am very much underdog as well. And I'm enjoying winning. I'm enjoying continuing to see myself like really go past where I thought I could actually go. But your story really was motivating. So obviously from a mental performance standpoint, it makes total sense to me, who has been in the field for quite some time, that understands like athletes need this. You know, there's a level that a lot of us really don't think about as general pub. Like they need this. The mind is just like the body. It needs constant care and exercise. So to me, when I found out that we had a mental performance coach, I was like, oh, that makes total sense. But digging into like how you came to it, I would love to hear the story again. So like, how the hell did you get to where you are? Because like what you do, I mean, I've been inside the center. I'm like, yo, this place is fucking dope.
Where do I even start with that? Where did I start last time?
I know. Well, I mean, I think you started because you were not born in the U.S., correct?
No, I was born in Taiwan. I was born and raised there for 18 years. So,
Okay. All right. So
okay.
that's where you started.
We'll start there. So I was born and raised in Taiwan. Was always an athlete growing up. Competed in multi sports and all that. And my, you would think being a mental performance specialist, that you're like, oh yeah, she was mentally really great. Like her mental game was great. That's probably no, like
Dude,
it was
right?
the opposite.
Right? We like jump into careers that we need the most help with.
Yeah, exactly. My mental game sucked. Like, my coaches were always like, which Irene is going to show up today? We don't know. Like,
That's so frustrating. I can imagine too.
I remember during trials or even competitions for the varsity teams and stuff, like every time I made a mistake, I would immediately just look around to make sure nobody saw it. That's how deep in my own head I was, and that's how deep in my own there was just such lack of confidence in my own ability. Every time I made a mistake, I was like, oh man,
Oh God.
I think that's where my imposter syndrome started. It was like, they're gonna find out I'm not as good as I actually am.
Oh my God. I'm only 12, but whatever.
And then, so of course, naturally, being in Taiwan, I did not know sports psychology or performance psychology was even a thing. I didn't know I could get help to strengthen my mind.
Yeah. Right.
I was just like, oh, this is an affliction, a curse.
Yeah. I'm born with this. It's in my genes.
This weakness forever. I went to college where I started studying psychology, and there was an elective course that was in sports psychology, and I first saw it. I was like, this is a thing? Like, what in the world? So of course, I signed up for it right away. And then at that time, I was pursuing a new hobby. It was surfing, but I really, really wanted to get good. And it was, quite frankly, kind of a scary sport to learn.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're just, as you're learning, you're getting yourself into riskier and riskier.
You're so exposed. You're so vulnerable.
People being ruder to you. You have to grow a thicker skin, whatever it is.
See, this is how I know you're a badass, because you mentioned the waves and the people and zero about the wildlife. Irene, I am frantically afraid anytime I step foot in the ocean that there's a fucking shark somewhere.
Oh my gosh. I am deathly afraid of sharks. And it was so funny. This is how I started surfing. I watched Bethany Hamilton's movie, Soul Surfer, where she was
why'd you...
I watched that movie, and literally the next day I was like, I think I'm going to go try surfing.
See, this is how... This is why you work with high pressure, high level people, dude. I get it.
But so at that time, taking this course in sports psychology, kind of at the same time as I was really trying to progress myself in surfing. And then I just started applying all the things that we were learning in class to what I was doing out in the ocean. And I was like, oh yeah, this checks out. Okay, this actually works.
Yeah.
and so I was like, wow, I can actually, I'm actually helping myself through all the mental barriers that I didn't know how to help myself through before. And so immediately there was I was captivated. I was so enthralled. I was like, this thing is so cool. This is the coolest field ever.
Yeah.
During that time, one of my friends was, she was training to be a pro snowboarder at the time. And then she met a guy called Andy Walsh, who at the time was the high performance director at Red Bull. And so she basically introduced me to his work and was like, you need to go check out what this guy is doing with the best athletes in the world. And so looked into his work. And, at the time, I think this is also right around when Felix Baumgartner was jumping from the outer space. Red Bull was doing all those projects. Yeah. And then the performing under pressure camp. So I was following all of that. And I was like, this is insane. You can do this.
Yeah, this is insane. This is a job.
Blew my mind. And so I think that was kind of the moment where I, during those years where I was following Andy Walsh's work and all that thing, and kind of going through my own journey with surfing and learning about sports psychology in college, I was like, I'm going to work at Red Bull. Like, that's it. It's decided. At some point, I'm going to work at Red Bull, and I'm going to be working and helping those athletes with their mental game. And then, so that then kind of like set my trajectory for going to grad school in sports psychology. And I remember walking into my program, and then my first sit-down meeting, it was an academic advising with my director. First day having my academic advising sit down with him, he asked me, he's like, oh, so, I asked all my students this, like, do you have any idea of like what population you're interested in working with or where you see yourself taking your career? And I was like, immediately like, Red
fucking badasses. There's your answer. Can I say fucking?
He was not expecting such a like decisive answer. Most people were like, oh, maybe this, maybe that. I was like, no, Red Bull. He's like,
Red Bull.
Wow, really ambitious. And then he was just like, I remember him saying, he's like, I love your passion and your ambition. It's like, and also don't let this, like maybe, put horse blinders on you to like other opportunities that may open up.
Yeah. And
I was like, no, you don't understand. Like,
you don't get it.
You don't get it. It's going to be Red Bull. I don't know when. I don't know how. I don't know. Could be 10 years, could be 15 years, somewhere along the way. I know I was hoping and I knew that I wanted to be with Red Bull. So
I love that.
And I think that's just kind of for the past, couple years, it's always just been my North Star. And maybe it wasn't like every day I had like, a vision board of Red Bull, like on my wall, like looking at it.
Yeah. But you did. It's okay. Like, I don't know if you could see it. I actually, in my top left corner, there's like a blue jar. It says Desi's Dreams in there. Yeah.
Easy.
I started adding to that like 5-6 years ago. I honestly haven't broke it open. I think it's a good time to do that. Mm-hmm. But that being said, Irene, it's okay if you had a Red Bull on your vision board. I do too, bro. It's cool.
I definitely journaled about it. I don't think I've created maybe I should create a vision board.
I love that.
But yeah, I think, once you set your sights on like, this is my North Star, like somehow all your actions kind of align and opportunities align. And whether you call that like manifestation, or maybe it's just your mind is now primed to like look for opportunities that are aligned with that. Like, have you ever noticed when you think about when you're car shopping and you're like thinking about buying a certain car and you're like, you've been researching it online, all of a sudden you see it everywhere on the street.
Yeah. So you're primed what is it? What Irene, what is that called? It's not object permanence. What the hell is it called? I should probably know this. I did a damn podcast about it, but you're absolutely.
I study psychology, but I don't remember.
Yeah, no, so for our listeners out there, I think it was like episode like 70 or something. I'll go back to it. I literally did it as like one of our Mentorship Monday episodes. This is what you get when you have a host who has ADHD. I'm doing the best I can, people. Okay. I see that all the time. And it's so funny to hear you say whether that's manifestation or whatever that is. I find a lot of solace in the idea that I can create opportunities for myself and cue my environment to try to seek those opportunities. And maybe I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, because I had a very similar feeling going out of college. I mean, as a dietitian, for the most part, especially back in 2012, I'm kind of dating myself right now. When I graduated, it's mostly a clinical job. Like, you're going out and you're doing tube feeds, like that's what it is. And I remember talking to, when I got into my internship and took my test, I remember talking to one of our advisors, and I had said, she's like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, well, like, thank you so much for the internship and the credential, but I don't want to do any of this. Like, I want to own my own business. I want to do some like really cool things. And like, same thing. I was like, okay, like, good luck. I'll see you in the clinic. And I just have so much happiness that I never went back to the clinic because I was like, I honestly didn't really know what it was going to look like, but I also knew that this wasn't it. And I love to hear you say that, just having that feeling of this is my North Star. Yours was way more specific, which makes the story 5,000 times better.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, I was never a very academically focused person. Like I remember when I was growing up, like growing up in Taiwan, Asian parents, like I got in so much trouble for my report cards because all of I have like subpar.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, are you supposed to be a doctor right now?
I had subpar grades, and then on top of that, every single teacher would write in the comment section of my report card, like, easily distracted. And so to my parents, like, I was like, that was like end of the world. So yeah, it was funny like that. I found something that I was so deeply passionate about that I not only went to grad school, I voluntarily went to grad school.
Dude, yes.
Yeah,
like
my parents were really
at this point, you're volunteering to go.
No, they were like pushing me because like my whole family was like, we come from, everybody in my family has doctorate degree, like master's degree, everything. And so there's almost this expectation for us to go. And then so at the time, it was almost like, until I discovered sports tech, I was almost like, all right, like what program?
Yes, I got to put on this white coat.
Because my family's
yeah.
Digging myself into bigger debt constantly.
I know, right? God.
And then so it was just crazy that I found something I was so passionate about. Like I was like, I want to go to grad school for this.
I love it. Well, like fast forward to Irene, like now, you and I think had the same, guttural laugh when we were talking about the role of imposter syndrome and like anything that we're doing. Cause I think as I was there, that was honestly the first time that I was going to work with any of our athletes or talent or dancers. So I had said to you, I was like, hey, like I feel the same way right now, but I know for me, what I'm learning about myself is if I'm really uncomfortable, it's probably the best thing for me. So shut the fuck up and let's go. So like, that's kind of like the inner dialogue that happens for me. I don't know for you with where you're at. Do you have moments of imposter syndrome? Do you have moments of self-doubt? I mean,
absolutely.
I would assume, yeah, that's why you and I probably connect.
Oh, absolutely. It was so deep. The imposter syndrome was so real when I first joined Red Bull, because all of a sudden I was thrust into this world that I thought would happen maybe 5-10 years down the road. And then here I was having to take a quantum leap. Be here, like in a sense, because I was like, wow, like I thought this was something that would happen later in my career when I was more like, way further down the road, when I was like really established, like all of those things. And then all of a sudden I was thrust into like this world. And it, like, don't get me wrong, I'm so excited. However, I am surrounded by the best of the best, with all the other,
right?
Yeah. Like physical therapists, dietitians, strength coaches, everybody, and even the best of the best athletes in the world. Like these guys don't, like that's why they're Red Bull. There's something about them,
Yeah.
That just pushes boundaries. So when I came in, there was like a part of me that was literally just like festering in my own imposter syndrome. Yeah.
You're just like stewing. You're just having internal conversations with yourself and no one knows, but they're not good.
No. And it was constant. And sometimes it's getting better now. I will say it's getting a lot better, but at first it was so constant, and it was really, like, to be honest, like it was really challenging. Like I was like arriving at this huge dream of mine, and I felt like shit.
Yeah.
I was like, here is your dream that you've been working for the past like years, multiple. And it's literally been like gift wrapped, handed to you. You're like, here you go. Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here feeling like shit.
I
Feeling
don't know if I'm going to cry or throw up.
feeling so undeserving of it. Um, so yeah, it was definitely really challenging. So, but one thing I think in trying to work through this, I've had to realize like I had to like really kind of start identifying it as my imposter syndrome voice. Like, oh, there it is again, right? Like here's my
Yeah.
imposter
Yeah.
syndrome voice coming in, telling me all the things where I'm like lacking and not doing enough of, and blah blah blah. And all these other people are so much more accomplished, and it just all of that like little nagging comments. And I had to really then just like listen to it and identify and be like, okay, this is what that sounds like.
Yeah.
And then I also had to I had to understand, like, because I think everything to some extent serves a purpose, right? Like, if your mind didn't think it
Yeah.
was helpful, it wouldn't utilize it. It's like, so I'm like, what purpose is my imposter syndrome like helping me with? Like, in what ways is it serving me? Maybe that I'm not conscious of. Um, and so I think I am, I still am to some extent hanging on to the imposter syndrome because, you know, when you're an imposter, you work that much harder. Like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you constantly feel like you're playing a game of catch up and you're like, I have to do more, I have to do more. And so, like, it actually really, like, in some ways, like, yes, it can feel like shit, but also if you utilize it, it can also, like, tremendously expedite your growth, right? Because you
Yeah.
always feel like you have to be playing catch up with that. So
Yeah.
I think
That's so
my
special.
imposter served me in a way the first couple months at Red Bull to really, really, really just like put myself in a high pressure cooker situation and just like grow tremendously. Like the amount that I have learned in the past few months, just, you know, is now that I reflect back on it, I'm just like, holy hell. Like, like I have,
I'm doing this.
yeah, I have learned so much in such a short time span. And if I had come in complacent and be like, you know, super complacent with like my abilities and my knowledge and my skills and all those things, like I don't think I would have put myself in the high pressure cooker situation.
Yeah.
So,
So it's so interesting to hear you say that this is something that is a constant thing for you. And I think one thing, Irene, that gets brought up, you know, one of my favorite podcasters and mental like performance teachers is Jim Quick. So I started this podcast largely because of the Quick Brain podcast. Like I just felt like his delivery and what he was teaching was really right in line with things that I was already thinking about, seeing, having worked with athletes and other mental performance professionals. Like it was just a lot of what I'm seeing. And one of the things that he had said, and you had sort of said it in your own words, one of the things that really spoke to me was if you're going to fight for your limitations, please believe that you're going to keep them. I remember hearing that and I was like, wow, like a lot of our limiting beliefs really dictate how we operate in the world. And that's just not professionally, that's just overall. And one of the things that I came to a while ago was like, you know what? There are things about me that I don't enjoy, but let me go ahead and try to hijack some of the strengths in that habit or that ritual. And let me see where this goes. And so you know, you and I are joking about like the object of like ADHD and too distractible. I've got to a point now where I've hijacked it to an extent where I know where I play and I know where I don't. I need opportunities just like this to collaborate with people, to be on the go, to create deadlines and projects for myself, and really have me be in a team setting, but at the same time, like I'm my own competition. Like that was me sort of hijacking that. And I think one thing that I heard you say right there that I thought was really important for our listeners to understand is if you view something as a limitation and you're willing to fight for it, chances are you're probably going to keep it unless you start to observe it. And I think that's a nice transition, Irene, into one really big question that I had for you. So like
Mhm.
you mentioned this. You're working with a lot of high level people. You're working with some crazy freak athletes. As you're observing them, what are some of the tendencies or consistencies that you see within them? Now, this can be their habits, this can be their mental fortitude, but whatever that is, like what's consistent when you look at these like really high performing individuals?
That's so tough because they are all like, when I look at every single one of them, I actually see a lot more differences than I do similarities. But I guess like if I'm trying to kind of find like a common thread with all of
Yeah,
them.
what are the commonalities? Because you're right, they're coming. I mean, anyone who's there is has such a diverse background, which is so
Mhm.
so cool, right? But like commonalities, like what are you seeing?
Commonalities, I think just like, oh, this is gonna take me a second to like put into words because I think it's really hard to like get to the core of it.
No, no, Irene, we got
Because, you know,
time.
like you could give the easy answers like, oh, like discipline, whatever. Like, what? Yeah, like
Yeah,
you're all discipline. Like they
of
got their
course. Yeah. Like the bare minimum is
yeah, like
discipline and intentionality. Like I don't know what else. Okay, done.
exactly. Um,
I'm seeing something,
mm,
but you're spending way more time with them. So I'm kind of interested in what you're seeing versus like what I'm seeing.
okay. I want to hear what you've seen as this is brewing.
You just want to cherry pick my answer. I, I'm a huge lover and believer in the idea of truly falling in love with the process
Mhm,
and knowing that that relationship is reciprocal.
mhm.
Um, what I'm seeing is that there's a sheer love for that given sport, and at the same time, a sheer it's connected, a sheer love and an intense amount of fear of like where they have to go to. Like you talked about the pressure.
Mhm.
There's like a really large love hate relationship with it, but there's a comfort in being present throughout it, which I think
Mhm.
is so, so special to observe.
Definitely, yeah. Like the love is for sure there. You feel it, like you see it, like in them, like it just like radiates from every athlete, right?
Yeah.
That, like that is how dedicated they are. Like they love that so much that they're willing to accept like all the risks that come with their sport. And like you know, Red Bull sponsors a lot of really extreme, like high, like action sports.
Yeah.
So the risks are really high, and then the rewards on the other end of that are also really high.
Yeah.
Um, I think maybe uh, I totally agree with what you said, and maybe another piece I want to add to that is like this piece of like self-expression of their potential.
Oh,
It's like
I love that.
like
Yes.
when
Wow.
they
Yes.
are hitting optimal performance, it is the truest form of self-expression for all of them.
Yeah.
It's just an expression of who they are. It's like not more, not less. Like it's just who they are, like right
Hmm.
there in that instant.
It's their art, right?
Yeah, it's their art, and it's like it's. I
Yeah.
think like in this society, we're always striving to be more than who we are. But really,
Hmm.
what like optimal performance is being exactly who you are. There's no need to be more or less or different or whatever. It just is. Like you just are self-expressing the most authentic version of you and your most authentic potential.
Yo, Irene, if you're going to be podcasting like this, I'll just leave and just give you the mic and let you take over the show, dude. Oh my God. There's such gems in what you're observing there. Um, which is as listeners, I want to encourage you take a pause and rewind and listen to that part again, because I think it's truly special, because anything that we are choosing to involve ourselves in, like our art, our metaphorical or literal art, anything that we're doing is a really phenomenal self-expression of who we are. And the only place to get there is to, I think, Irene, what you had said, is to be authentically you and no one else.
Yeah. It's, it's so exhausting. It takes a lot of mental energy to put up a facade and try to be something else, right? And like, that's the thing, like, you're never going to beat somebody else at being them. Like, you're like, oh, I want to be just like this person. You're never going to be better than them at being them. The only thing you can ever win at in life is just being yourself, because that's the best thing you can be.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean, you can look to others for qualities like that you admire, that, and like maybe you want to cultivate more of within yourself. But if you're trying to like constantly imitate and emulate somebody else, like, forget it. You're not, if you're looking to be number one, you're not going to be, because you're not going to beat them at being, like, no one's going to be Michael Jordan at being Michael Jordan, whatever.
Yeah, no, people tried. Wow. That's such a big gem. One of the things, Irene, and I would love to transition into, I think, how you and I really got excited about just talking to each other, because there aren't a whole lot of people in my roster. I mean, I have friends, and to be honest, most of them are like,
is this where you tell me you're a
people
loner?
who I've
Okay.
Yeah. Shut up. I have friends, okay? To be honest, like, most of them are online friends. But a lot of them share the same space in entrepreneurship and doing what I do. So like, outside of them, I'm talking mostly like just going outside of these doors in here and being in my Tucson, Arizona city. I can't have a lot of conversations like this. So like, when you and I started talking about, I don't know how it got entered, but energy, and then being present. And then I think we had both, I don't know who cued who, but it was like, hey, have you read The Power of Now? And that's kind of when you and I both started really to geek out.
Such a good book.
It's such a great book. So I'd love to take some time to just you just finished, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just finished. Like,
okay.
Literally like 20 minutes.
Okay. Like, it's like 20 minutes ago. So you were obviously way more locked in than I am, because I did the audiobook because I need to be moving in at all times in most cases. So like, you and I really connected about a lot of what was being discussed with, no pun intended, The Power of Now, but just like the ritual and the habit behind observing. And so I'm halfway through. I told you, I've said this to you multiple times. I have to listen to a chapter, and then I almost take like a week or two to like think about what I just heard, because when I first started it, I was like, what the hell is this? And for our pod listeners, you've already heard the story. There's been multiple people on this podcast that have mentioned it. And then once Kendrick Lamar talked about him in his podcast or in his album, I was like, fine. All right. There's no such thing as coincidence. It's time to read The Power of Now by Eckart Tolle. But one of the things that I think was crazy at first is like a brand new way of thinking about emotions, thinking about how we think about the future or the past, or how most things are time bound, and what that means in the overall. So like I said, I'm halfway through. I have some like big things that I noted that I really, really took some time of intentionality with, that I journaled about, that I was like, I don't know why, but this shit is hitting me. Like, I'm personally going through my own journey of generational trauma healing and things like that. So like, I'm noticing how powerful this is for me in my life right now. So with you having just completed it, you started to run me through the other day, like, this is what is really speaking to me. So with you being you, and at the same time doing what you do at a high level, like, what are you taking from the book so far? I'm sure you're probably going to have some other thoughts like a week later too. So you're going to be invited on for a part 2. Don't worry.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still digesting so much of the book, but I think one of the biggest standouts to me is this concept of being, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, instead, so it's so crazy because it was a little hard for me to wrap my mind around because, my whole thing is mental performance, optimizing the mind. And then
Yeah.
here comes the book, The Power of Now, basically being the mind is the problem.
The mind is
I'm like, wait,
your thoughts are the problem. And you're like teaching them like how to think better.
And your mind cannot solve the mind cannot solve the problem because the mind is the problem itself.
And then even more imposter syndrome comes up like, oh my God, what am I doing?
But I do, that piece I do want to speak to a bit because I have a bit of thought with the power of now and how it relates to imposter syndrome. So it talked about how the ego needs problems to survive, right? The ego literally creates problems because the ego needs identification with things. It needs to identify itself with the past. It needs to identify itself with problems, like all of these things to have the sense of identity. If it doesn't, the ego crumbles, basically. It's gone. And like any organism, it's trying really hard to stay alive. So it's trying to keep you trapped in this identification process. And that's what causes a lot of, well, based on what the power of now is saying is like, that's what causes a lot of suffering in our lives is this this merging and this like being fused to certain things, like being fused to like, I need to be this, or like, I need to have that, or like all this attachment is what creates a lot of the suffering is like, because we're not just allowing things to be, we're not accepting things.
Yeah.
We're resisting what is actually happening. And so from reading that, I was then reflecting on like this whole imposter syndrome and it says like the ego always comes from a place of lack. So yeah, I was like, so my ego is literally creating this whole imposter syndrome. Like it's like literally creating my own problems.
Yeah. Damn it.
I am identifying with the imposter syndrome. I'm identifying like with that pain and that suffering. And so my ego, because my ego doesn't want me to identify with it, it keeps feeding me this like little voices in my head about how I'm not good enough, how I'm not like this, like X, Y, and Z. Yeah. You're not smart enough. You're not doing enough. You're not whatever. So yeah, I think it's just, now that I have like a completely different like almost like a perspective shift on it. Now I'm almost seeing it as like, okay, like where is my ego trying to create this problem for me right now? Because I need to identify with it.
I'm so glad that you went there because I bookmarked like 4 things that really spoke to me that, like I told you, kind of like mind fucked me for like a week or 2 and sometimes 3. I've been trying to read this book for almost 6 months now, almost.
It's a deep book. I can reread it like sometimes over and I'll still find these things. I was like, that wasn't written there before. Like, I didn't see that.
Yeah. And so for our listeners out there I want to make sure that you take the time to go read this book, because if you're listening to this podcast and if you're one of the 100 people that devotes time to listen to a crazy host like myself get excited about stupid ass shit but is so cool. My thought process around that is you are someone who is either currently a high level individual or you're someone who is really looking to ground themselves in authenticity to continue to get to that place where you're the healthiest version of yourself. So Eckart Tolle, The Power of Now. So this book, I think, might be something that would be incredibly advantageous for you to take some time in your self-searching journey. I think one of the most powerful things of this process is knowing thyself. And I think, Irene, what you just mentioned there is so powerful, because literally one of the thoughts that I wrote down, I want to read it back to you. Mm-hmm. Thinking is only a small aspect of consciousness. Thought cannot exist without consciousness, but consciousness doesn't need thought. And that was one that got me for quite some time, because it's exactly what you're saying. And I think for some of us who have been lucky enough to be present enough to know what it feels like to truly be present in the now, you know how replenishing that is for you. And I think, Irene, what you had just talked about there is like the ego needs to create problems and the ego needs to try to survive. And once we can continue to create habits and rituals for ourselves to check in with ourselves, I think that's what's really empowering. Because, I mean, here's a good question. How would you describe your moments of like now?
How would I describe my moments of now?
Yeah. Because I was honestly going to ask you, like, obviously this is a podcast about habits and rituals of high level people. So naturally the question always comes up, hey, what are your habits and rituals? But like, here's a better way to do this. How would you describe your moments of now?
Wow, that's deep. I mean, my immediate thought like goes to like when I'm outdoors and I'm just like awestruck by like natural beauty.
Yeah.
But then, however, like I'm also trying to like think, like I think nature has a way of bringing us into the present moment. It's so deep, it's so powerful. Like you can't help but just be completely immersed in that moment. Like when you see something so beautiful in nature, like whether it's, you're in Yosemite or somewhere else, or like, seeing the Northern Lights, like you can't help but just be like completely enthralled and in the moment with it. However, I'm trying to think of like more, I guess, like day-to-day situations where I feel in the now.
No, this is yours. You can go, Irene, bro, like you can go wherever you want. Like this is me asking you.
I think where I also feel in the now is sometimes when in my work too, like I'm not saying I always am complete, like I think it's very hard to always stay in the present, because sometimes when people talk to you, you're already thinking of your next response. You're like not truly sitting there listening already. Mm-hmm. But there are like pockets of now in my work too. And those are very special moments, because in those moments, I almost feel like I'm picking up information, not just with what I normally pick up with like my five senses, like what I'm not just hearing what they're saying, but I'm almost sensing what they're saying. And I'm not crafting a response in my head, like trying to like getting a response ready. I'm literally just sensing like more than just what their words are communicating to me. Yeah. And so when I'm deeply in the now, I'm able to pick up like multiple layers of information just from one sentence that they're saying and speaking. Yeah. And that's how I know like I'm in the now in my work. Yeah. It doesn't happen all the time. Oftentimes, like my mind, more oftentimes my mind's already chattering, being like, "Oh, here's what you need to tell them next," or whatever.
Or where do I want to go this weekend?
But there are those little pockets, and it's very special because, it feels like a deeper connection. I feel like I have a way deeper understanding of what they're trying to tell me, and then and this is how I know that I'm not just making it up in my head. When I do, and when they finish speaking and I do respond, I respond from a place of total presence, and they're like, they feel so heard. Like they tell me that they feel really heard and seen in those moments.
Yeah.
So.
A very, very deep answer to a very deep question. I appreciate you going there. I think that part is special. Outside 100% does something to me too. I mean, we literally just got back from the mountain right before we jumped on here. And there's something that's really powerful about being outside. You mentioned flow earlier. Have you seen the movie Soul?
Soul, no.
The Pixar movie.
No, but people have been telling me I need to go watch it.
I know. Put that shit on your list. It's pretty special. The premise of the movie itself, like one of the characters is a jazz musician, and so they try to connect consciousness with artists and other people getting into their craft and really tapping into flow and what flow actually is, which is being in the now. I mean, that's a huge reason why each and every day, Irene, like I play basketball. Like never fails. I get my family down. Family's good.
Mm-hmm.
8 p.m. rolls around and I go straight to the park and I'll hoop for like 30 to 45 minutes because for me, it doesn't ever feel like 45 minutes. It feels it's literally timeless. I don't really understand it, but I do know that when I'm in that moment, like it's a really great reminder for those other moments of the day, like just like you're talking about, like you can't always be locked into the now. It's a really good reminder that when something is off, that I feel empowered and I also have the power to check in with myself, like, what's going on, you know? And I think that part is really, really powerful. So to hear you say that, I think is really cool because it's almost like an energetic exchange when, like, especially with what you're talking about, like when you're able to really hold space for someone, not waiting for the answer of what you need to talk to them about, but mainly just like being present. I think that's so freaking powerful.
Yeah, it definitely changes the way I approach my work. And like I'm so glad you mentioned, like you have a place where you go to for full, like how amazing does that feel when your mind just
Yeah.
turns off and you just don't have
Yeah.
thoughts anymore. You don't have identification with all these problems, all these like negative patterns.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just in the present. Like that's it. Like there are no
Yeah.
problems. There are no problems when you're playing basketball. Like
Yeah. Yeah. There really are.
yeah.
There really are. I think that part is so special. Well, I mean, you kind of answered one of the questions I wanted to ask you was like, hey, working with a bunch of high level people probably reminds you that you need to take care of yourself. So what I usually like to ask is like, how do you like to take care of yourself? But I think you've been very clear in a lot of our communication that sometimes going off the grid is like the best thing for you. And like, I understand that.
Yeah. I think past couple weeks, I've been really, really just going off the grid. I'll literally like Friday night, get off work. I will pack up my car, get my dog, and we'll drive 5 hours up to Mammoth. Yeah.
Yeah. Goodbye.
And like when I leave, I'm always seeking disconnection. That's what I found. Every time I drive out of LA, I'm like, I need to disconnect. I need to disconnect from busyness. I need to disconnect from, people's expectations, from like, sometimes it's so, because just being in this, like this busy of a city and this fast pace of an environment and even like profession, it's so
Yeah.
easy to like lose your own voice because you're always hearing other people's voices. And I think that's really what I'm seeking when I get out of town is I want to hear my own voice again.
Yeah.
And so when I leave driving out of LA, I'm like, I need to get out of here. I need to disconnect from the people.
Yeah.
And then what I end up finding is, in that disconnection, when I get up there, I find on the other end, like deep connection again with myself, with the present moment, with, a lot more gratitude. I think the day-to-day grind, I can lose that sense of gratitude a lot of times. And so being up there, like it's really recharging, and being free from, what other people expect me to do or like to-do lists and all those things. And I literally just take my dog and we go hike up to alpine lakes and stuff. And we just camp around and then we just jump in hot springs. There's no agenda. There's just no agenda. And so freeing. And it's so much easier up there to access like that gratitude and present moment. Yeah. But what do you do? What do you do?
What do I do? I too like being outside. Yeah. Basketball and being outside are like two things that I love doing. I love moving my body, to be honest. I think what I've really realized about myself is that stillness is something that I struggle with. Even just in my meditation journey, I can give myself the 10 to 12 minutes of being still, but even just as a dad too, I find that like it's really hard for me to sit down like on the floor and to play. 'Cause I feel like I put a lot of pressure on myself as a father to like make sure things are good, to make sure like I'm continuing to move our family forward. And even just in my extended family, I'm the oldest of 5. So it's like, you know, making sure that like I'm trying to set a good example. So it's really hard for me to be still, but I do find that those moments of stillness for me happen outside. Like living in Arizona, I don't know if I could live in like the Pacific Northwest or somewhere that doesn't have a lot of sunlight, because for me the sun is incredibly healing. Being outside has saved me in a lot of ways. So like I think that there's definitely some similarities. I love my family. There are times where I'm like, I wish I could go off the grid. I'm out of here. but then I'm gonna like, wait, can I come? Like, yes, let's go. We're going off the grid together. But I think probably those are the biggest things. I really love testing my limits. I really love strength training for that reason. But yeah, I think for me, like I like to be reminded of not only how like not everything's about me, but also like how empowering it is to push my mental and physical limits. Because for me, it reminds me that I can go do that next uncomfortable thing and I'm going to be okay. It might be really hard, but I'm going to be okay. And for me, I'm still finding a lot of those things, but this podcast, I mean, everyone on our listeners, Irene, have already heard this story a million times. I overthought this podcast for multiple years, and finally on my birthday, you know, I want to say 3 years ago, 3 years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm going to launch it. I'm done trying to like gather information. Like, no, like I'm doubting myself. Let me just go ahead and see what happens. And I think what's been really powerful is I get to connect with wonderful people like you. It's a large, phenomenal reason why I'm even at Red Bull because they listen to this pod. So it's just stuff like that. I think for me, part of my hero's journey, just continuing to show up, and that part is special.
That's beautiful to hear you say that, honestly. And I'm so glad you started this podcast. Like, I know there is so much value to preparation. I do genuinely believe that we do need to do some prep work, you know. However, the mind can be, it's very clever, you know, it's very clever. Sometimes it'll keep you stuck in that preparation phase. That imposter syndrome will keep you stuck in the preparation phase. You will never feel ready enough to take that next step.
Dude, yes.
It'll be that imposter syndrome will show up as that form of a little nagging voice, like, well, are you really prepared? Are you really, have you really done all the work? Like, it will do that. So I'm glad you just, you know, took the leap on it when you felt ready. I don't know if you felt ready, but I'm glad you took the leap.
No, I wasn't ready, but I was also like really ready to be tired of my shit, the bullshit. So that's a big reason why. Wow, Irene, I knew that this would be a fantastic talk. I know that you can't see this on my side, but I have some like producer controls here where I can mark and timestamp certain things that I was like, holy shit, I want to share this. I'm looking at 6 right now in our under hour conversation. So you're dropping gems once every 10 minutes. But I want to thank you so much.
Is that enough?
Yeah, right. I should have had one every minute. I should have had 60. Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Oh shit.
More than
wow. Yeah. Wow. Irene, I'm going to listen to this again and come up with 10 more. Don't you worry. I'll let you know. I'll let you know where the marks stand when we're done here. So none of this stuff is scripted, obviously, but I do script 2 questions that I like to leave a lot of our guests with. And so the first question is, this is the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. So for you, have you made it? And if not, what does making it look or feel like for you?
So here's the thing. Okay. This is something I've just started observing with people, with athletes, with what just within my line of work and just, in life. I'm observing that I feel like it's almost a rite of passage in some ways that we come from a place of lack. Like we come from a place of like, I need to prove myself. I need to, make my mark. I need to accomplish all these things to show that I've made it. And then somewhere along the way, we all go through a transition. Some people later than others, and there's no rhyme or reason. It's just sometimes it's a sudden life circumstance that forces us to go through the transition. Sometimes it's just maturity, whatever it is. But at some point, I feel people start to transition over to a place of more self-worth and fulfillment and, feeling whole with themselves, as opposed to always chasing the next accomplishment and feeling like they haven't made it. And I think I'm like right in the middle of that right now. And so I find myself going back and forth between the two. But I think I'm exactly where I need to be. So yeah, in that sense, I've made it.
I just want to let you know that I marked 2 more things in your sentence. Oh, wow. Irene, you're amazing, my friend. All right, last question, and then I'll let you get it on your weekend. Thank you so much for not going rogue and going off the grid this weekend and spending some time with the Can't Believe I Made It pod. We are so thankful
awesome.
that
I've always stayed.
Yeah, we are so thankful that you were able to bless the mic here on the podcast. So last question for you, and we'll let you go and let you get back to your dog and your weekend of solitude and solace. So this is a podcast about the hero's journey, right? So I want to ask you, who is your hero, or who is your hero comparison? I give you 2 chances to answer it, because some people are like, I don't really watch action films. I don't really watch superheroes. This is my hero. And other people are like locked into the hero comparison. So for you, who is your hero, or who is your hero comparison, and why?
Okay, define hero comparison for me, because I'm a little lost on that term.
Like a hero comparison.
Who I compare myself to, or like
like we kind of see like superheroes growing up, right? And you really connect with a hero for some weird reason. Like for me, first thing that comes up was like, I used to love Leonardo from Ninja Turtles, because I felt like he was wise and we shared values, and he loved his brothers, and he wanted to really help them to find their true potential. Like that's something that, like, to me, like, oh, it would be Leonardo. So that would be an example. But for you, go ahead.
Wow, no one's ever asked me that. I haven't.
Irene, I'm just trying to ask you a bunch of questions that no one's ever asked you. Like the objective of anyone on this pod is like, yo, how can I make you uncomfortable? Let's talk about it.
I mean, off the top of my head, like, I don't know why I'm really drawing a blank right now.
Well, do you have a hero? Like this also, that's why I gave you a 2-parter. You can answer either one. So like, do you have someone that you look up to in your life?
I have many people I look up to in my life. However, I feel like, okay, I will say, like, one person I really do look up to a lot is my dad. And he, in many ways, is my hero. And like, there's a whole backstory to it, because like, we didn't have the best relationship growing up. We had a very, very turbulent relationship for many, many years. And we're still on the healing path right now. We're still healing that relationship, but it's day and night difference from what it was before. However, my dad went from, why he's my hero is because he really showed me that change was possible. You know, like, people are always being like, oh, people don't really change. Yeah. My dad is like 180, completely different person than who I knew growing up. And so, and he's it's not and I know it's not a temporary change, because this has been like a gradual change for many, many years that I've observed. I've even tested him many times.
Yeah. I mean, that comes with the package, right? Yeah.
But no, he's a changed man. And without going too deeply into it, like he, had some anger issues when I was growing up, and it caused a lot of tension and friction in the family. And now, like, he doesn't get mad anymore. Like, and he found that through a lot of like meditative practices, like very long, like not just
power of now, dude.
Yeah, like he was so committed to the meditation. Like he was doing, I think at one point, like he was meditating for like 2 hours a day. However, I'm not saying like everybody should just go meditate for 2 hours. Like,
that takes years and years.
And like I hear that the better you get at it, the less you actually need to do it, because you can sink into that deeper state like way faster. But what I'm saying is, he's my hero because he showed me that it is truly possible to transform yourself and see a change within yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think it is truly possible for all of us, like with imposter syndrome, to like transform and see ourselves as whole, as more than enough, as, as just like, we just need to be like, we're ready.
Yeah.
Everything we're looking for is already here. We just don't see it. We just need to be it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you just got yourself another mark. Oh, Irene, I love talking to you anyway. But like I said, we are so thankful that you took some time for us today to drop all the knowledge, wisdoms, to show up as your authentic self. I mean, those things are absolutely priceless, and I appreciate you as a human being, and I'm super excited to continue our friendship, our collaborations, like just in the name of like helping people do dope shit. And I know, having been on a performance staff before, that sometimes it's a thankless job. Like, the athletes love what you do for them, and at the same time, like, you're not really getting any of the camera or the messaging. So I want to make it a point to like also talk to other people that are helping people. So I'm so thankful for you, Irene. Thank you so much for taking some time today with the,
I'm so
all right, y'all.
Yes. So grateful.
I know.
And as always, I'm always grateful for our conversations, because it's always, it's always something, like, I always learn so much from it.
Yeah, I do. Same thing.
Oh, here, my dog's here.
Oh, your dog can say what up. I'm surprised my dog isn't in here just saying what up.
Decided to join at the end.
I love it. All right. So for our listeners out there, we'll make sure that I don't know. The hard thing here is you're going to get to see the product of a lot of the really cool shit that Irene does through a lot of our badass athletes. You're not really going to get to see her. So if you could, anytime that you see some sort of Red Bull athlete or something cool happening, just give her a thought. Give her a thought in the now of like, that's some of Irene's work. Hell yeah.
No. It's all them. I can, I facilitate the process, but the athletes need to do the work for themselves.
They're the badasses.
They're the badasses, and they need to do the work. Like, I can give them all the mental skills if they're not going to practice it,
Mm-hmm.
So they ultimately, at the end of the day, they are the ones putting in the work and making the change for themselves. So
yeah,
it's not me.
Yeah. And so for our listeners out there, none of that is different. It's the same thing with you. There's a lot of information out there. What most people need is the application, is to go out and do that next uncomfortable thing. So I hope today's conversation helped you to do that. As always, you can always hit us up. There's something that really, really spoke to you. Please feel free. Take a screenshot, shoot us a message at DesiaBeta at IMadeItPod, and we'll make sure we continue to engage with our community. But Irene, you're the best. Don't leave right after we're done here, because I have some directions for you. But You're amazing, my friend. Thank you for being you. Appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.